Thank you for visiting the Horry-Georgetown Technical College Physical Therapist Assistant Training Modules. If an objective is not applicable to this clinical setting, score the objective as NA for not applicable. If an objective is not observed during this clinical rotation, to the extent that a rating is appropriate, score the objective as NO for not observed. Now, we will look at the 1 to 4 ordinal scale, used to score the student's performance. A score of 1 means the student is unable to safely perform a particular skill. For example, a score of 1 indicates the student is unable to safely demonstrate gait training, with physical or verbal cues, and assistance from the clinical instructor. Next, a score of 2 means the student is able to perform a particular skill, but requires constant supervision from the clinical instructor. The student needs verbal cueing, or physical assistance, from the clinical instructor to perform a skill safely. Direct presence of the clinical instructor is necessary during the activity. For example, a score of 2 indicates the student requires verbal and physical assistance from the clinical instructor to safely perform therapeutic exercises with the patient. Next, a score of 3 means the student is able to perform a particular skill, but requires advice from the clinical instructor to expand knowledge or skills. Direct presence of the clinical instructor can be in line of sight for the activity being performed. For example, a score of 3 indicates the student requires input from the clinical instructor on the rationale on how to alter patient positioning to complete the activity. The student is able to perform the skill safely, with minimal modification from the clinical instructor. Finally, a score of 4 means the student is able to perform a particular skill, with only confirmation from the clinical instructor. The student may confer with the clinical instructor, prior to, or following the activity, for the purpose of sharing information, and/or validating clinical decision-making. The student is capable of functioning safely without the clinical instructor being in direct line of sight supervision. For example, a score of 4 indicates the student confers and provides rationale to the clinical instructor regarding the progression of traction settings, then performs the correct setup without the need for modification from the clinical instructor. This concludes this training module.